Influencing popular culture, politics, and everything in between. The local station takes you ringside as we discuss the crazy world that is professional wrestling. This is Going Ringside with the local station.
Hello again, and thank you for joining us for another episode of Going Ringside. This will be episode 14 if you're watching through all the episodes. I want to thank you for watching last week, episode 13 with Jake the Snake Roberts. You can go back and watch now wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube. Just search Going Ringside episode 13. Jake was so open with us about his life, about his struggles with drugs and alcohol, and finally getting sober again. Just a great show. Talked a lot about his time with The Undertaker, Steve Austin, his problems when he went down to WCW. Just a lot of good stuff there. I want to encourage you to go give us a follow on both Instagram and TikTok at Going Ringside. We're sharing a lot of exclusive content there. In the last week alone, we've talked about Hulk Hogan possibly wanting to show up at WrestleMania 40 to face Steve Austin. We've talked about this frivolous lawsuit against The Rock. We've talked about the Seth Rollins dilemma now that he's in a major Marvel movie. All this content right now, if you search Going Ringside at both Instagram and TikTok, is a good place to find all that. I'm putting stuff up all the time. We're really getting those going, so it's another good place to get some good wrestling content there. Today, you know, we needed to preview River City Wrestling Con. If you're not familiar, it is the major show that will be coming to the Jacksonville Fairgrounds the weeks of June 10th and June 11th. That's the weekend. That's Saturday and Sunday, the 10th and 11th. And they are going to have a huge amount of major stars there. Bryan Danielson, used to be Daniel Bryan. Saraya, used to be known as Paige in WWE. Kurt Angle, Rob Van Dam, Nia Jax, Ron Simmons, one of my personal favorites, Britt Baker, DDS. So there's just a lot there. Bushwhacker Luke is going to be there for the old timers. So it's just a lot going on with it. This is a major event going on in Jacksonville. So if you're listening to us in the Northeast Florida region, or really anywhere in Florida or Georgia, and you want to drive in and see all these folks, it is going to be a great event. So today, we're going to have one of the promoters of this, the main promoter, Nick Batey, come in and join us here on the podcast to tell us everything you need to know about River City Wrestling Con. But before we do that, I want to talk to you about a sweepstakes we have going at newsforjax.com. If you're in Jacksonville, you know our website. If you don't, if you're out of the area and listening, it's news4jax.com. Search around the site and search for the Insiders page. And if you're a News4Jax Insider, all you need is an email address. Go to this page and you can find all the details on the event coming up and how you can sign up for a pair of tickets. So we're going to be giving away 2 sets of 2 tickets on the next episode, which will drop June 7th. I'll announce our winners coming up on June 7th, but you can go to this page right now, sign up to win free tickets to River City Wrestling Con in our sweepstakes. We hope you'll sign up. All you need is to become a News4Jax Insider and give us your email address. Becoming an insider is not a big deal. Just give us your email address. That's all you need. You don't need to give any money or credit card number, nothing like that. Just an email address, and you can sign up in our sweepstakes to win some free tickets to River City Wrestling Con. So hope you can join us next week on the June 7th episode. I will announce the winners and let you know who won there. And then June 10th, we are going to be Going Ringside on the road for the first time. We'll be live at River City Wrestling Con all weekend long. Come join us, and we will be doing our very first live podcast from River City Wrestling Con. Not sure who we'll bump into. I'm hoping a lot of these names you're about to hear about. We will be doing a live podcast at River City Wrestling Con, probably Saturday, June the 10th. So if you're at the event, come see us, come talk to us. We'd love to hear from you. So there's a lot of excitement coming in, just wrestlers from all generations. I talked to Nick Batey here. He says one of his goals this year, because they've done this 4 years in a row, is to bring a lot of newer faces, younger talent that's popular with the modern generation, as well as your older talent, like Arn Anderson will be there. As I said, Ron Simmons. So a lot of excitement at River City Wrestling Con in Jacksonville, June 10th and June 11th. Here's my interview with the promoter, Nick Pate, who put all this together with everything you need to know if you plan on going to River City Wrestling Con at the Jacksonville Fairgrounds, June 10th and June 11th. Hey there, we are excited to be joined by the guy who's put this whole River City Wrestling Con thing together, Nick Pate. Nick, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, I'm honored to be here, Scott.
So talk to me a little about the event, how you put it all together, and some of the big names that are coming to Jacksonville for this.
Absolutely. So, of course, River City Wrestling Con will be at the Jacksonville Fairgrounds June 10th and 11th. We'll be here for our 4th event. It's going to be fantastic. We have Bryan Danielson and Saraya. They're going to be making very rare appearances. I believe this is one of 3 U.S. appearances they're doing for the year. And, of course, we have Kurt Angle and Rob Van Dam, well-known fan favorites. Then we have some major stars from AEW, Britt Baker, Tony Storm. I mean, there's going to be around 100 wrestlers coming through for this.
I want to go over all those wrestlers one by one, but take me back to the beginning. You've been doing this 4 years in Jacksonville, getting huge names. How did this happen in Jacksonville? Because before 4 years ago, we'd maybe get a Raw or a SmackDown here once in a while, but never do we get names along. I've seen NWO here over the years. You're bringing in Danielson and Saraya. How did we get here?
I ask myself that question every day. I originally started this because I was a student at FSCJ. I was at North Campus at the time, and I was part of the SGA, and I just made a spin-off group where it was more geek focused because we had a lot of geek presence.
What's SGA?
Student Government Association.
Gotcha. Okay.
Right, and I made my own student organization that was geek-focused, and I ended up being tasked with running FSCJ's first ever Comic-Con, and I've always been a big wrestling fan, so I had Leva Bates and John Davis make a special appearance on there, and I noticed that the wrestling element was very well emphasized, which I didn't expect. And
what do you mean by that?
Emphasized meaning that a lot of students were very happy to see them. A lot of people came out and took photos with them, and it kind of opened my eyes. There's like a big wrestling scene here. And I would work at Comic Cons, as a teenager, as a volunteer, and I noticed there wasn't a lot of wrestling represented, and the culture of wrestling fandom hasn't really been explored on a massive level until recently, where we see, WWE's really taking a lot of strides in the business world. So it inspired me to create my own wrestling-themed Comic-Con.
How old are you now?
I'm 24.
You've done all this. You started this when you were, it seems like it's something a 40-year-old would do, but you're doing it when you're 20. How did you decide to get into this so young?
I think it was mostly that I was inspired to kind of have my own career, have like a job that was, mine, something that I started. And, I've always been very passionate about wrestling, so I thought it was a great way to start things off.
So let's just start, and I want a lot more to talk about, but I want to go over the headliners, the people who are going to be here. Just let's go one at a time. Talk to me about some of them. Let's start with Saraya.
Yeah, so Saraya I thought was a very great get for this year because, women's wrestling is at the
She used to go by a different name.
Of course, in WWE she was known as Paige, and, she was also the main focus of Fighting With My Family.
The movie that Dwayne Johnson produced.
Right, and that was just a big hit a couple summers ago.
Yeah.
And, Saraya's kind of on this resurgence now. She's healed from her injury and she's back in the ring. And, women's wrestling is at the forefront of so many conversations. Because you even see on wrestling now, even on WWE, I think women are 50 to 60% of their on-screen time, which is something you haven't seen before.
Yeah, that is definitely a new thing that you would not have seen 20 years ago at all.
And she was at the epicenter of all that.
Yeah. So Bryan Danielson, another enormous name. Daniel Bryan in WWE, Bryan Danielson in AEW. Talking about snagging that huge name.
I didn't expect that one. I kind of was like a shot in the dark because I knew after last year we had to top Bret Hart and the Hardy Boys. So I definitely wanted to go in a more modern direction and bring in wrestlers that were on TV still. And I just, pitched the idea. How about Bryan Danielson? Because in Jacksonville, they came here for, it was the SmackDown that was also on the same day that AEW announced they were going to debut.
January 2019. I was there. I remember it well, yes.
Right, and that was such a great SmackDown because we had a dark match. It was Daniel Bryan against AJ Styles. And I'm like, there's...
It's a heck of a dark match.
Yeah, it was incredible. And it was untelevised. And it was just for us. But I remembered that fondly, and I'm like, you know what, that would be a great thing, a great callback. And Danielson doesn't do too many conventions. You rarely, if ever, see him out. So I just pitched him like, hey, how about you take a vacation to Florida? And then here we have it.
So let me stop for a second at Soraya and Bryan Danielson. They're also in Jacksonville-based AEW. Has having AEW helped with this, you think? Having all the wrestlers identify Jacksonville, Florida?
I think in a way, yes, because, Florida, when it comes to professional wrestling, I don't think a lot of people give the state of Florida enough credit because so much great wrestling has happened here over the past, 100 years. And Jacksonville especially is very underrated when it comes to wrestling because we have a great crowd, but our crowd is very specific on what they like. And with Jacksonville being the home base of AEW, a lot of them, whenever it's logistics-wise and we have to plan hotels or accommodations, they know Jacksonville like the back of their hand. So they know exactly where they're going to be. It's not a tough sell. You don't have to jump through so many hoops. And Jacksonville's now becoming, more familiar to the world, which is incredible.
So let's talk to me about some other names. Kurt Angle, how did you get Kurt, the Olympic gold medalist?
We had Kurt at our 2021 event, and he was hot off his match against Baron Corbin at WrestleMania. And he, there's such a big Florida fan base for Kurt because of his time in Impact Wrestling. And it wasn't at all like a tough sell to get him back here because he had such a great time. Rob
Van Dam. Tell me about RVD coming to town.
Oh, man, we are so excited for Rob Van Dam because he hasn't been to Jacksonville, believe it or not, in over 10 years. He did the house show with Impact back in, I think it was 2011. Rob has a big history in Florida because he trained with Dory Funk in Ocala, so it's a good callback for him.
He trained in Ocala?
That's right.
I did not know that. Interesting.
Yeah.
Is he still actively wrestling, or is he mostly retired now?
He's semi-retired. He'll do the occasional indie, but, Rob has so much going on that, wrestling kind of takes a backseat now.
Okay, I want to keep going with some of the new person, but I got to stop. I want to do some old school guys for me because that's my personal love. Double A is going to be there.
That's right, Arn Anderson, man. I love Arn Anderson. He's fantastic. There's been some scheduling conflicts. We try to get him, year after year, but now he's finally, got the time to make the trip.
A couple guys we just had on our podcast. Let's start with our most recent guest. Jake the Snake Roberts is going to be there. How'd you get Jake?
Oh, man, Jake the Snake, he was the first guest I ever booked for my very first convention.
Really?
That's right. 2019, he was the first guest we ever announced. He was the first one to sign on. And I mean, Jake's gone through such an incredible journey over the past few years, and it really speaks to, mental health in wrestling and just the way Diamond Dallas Page really revolutionized that process. I don't know have you seen the documentary about him?
About Jake or about Dallas?
About Jake and Dallas.
Yeah, I've seen parts of it, yeah. And I'm trying to work on getting Dallas on the show at some point down the road.
I love it. It's great because Jake's in such a positive place in life, and he's just appreciating his legacy. And that's just a very great thing for fans to be part of.
He seemed, when I had him on the show, it would have been a week before this episode, when I asked him about sobriety, he just perked up. He was really excited about it.
Yeah, it's a tough conversation, but he makes it very real. And I think it's a difficult thing for a lot to talk about, but I think Jake being so open and honest about it's really helping a lot of people.
So we had Ken Shamrock, the world's most dangerous man, on a couple months ago, and I talked to you about it, and you were kind of shocked that I was able to get Ken, but it looks like Ken has come into the fold. Tell me about Ken Shamrock coming on, and Dan Severn.
It's great because, for those of us that grew up with UFC, those were the trailblazers. Them, Don Fry and Royce Gracie, they were incredible athletes for their time. And just to see, even UFC now, they're making Jacksonville one of their homes. And it's just an honor to have Ken Shamrock on there because he's just, there's so much to say about his athleticism and his influence on just the professional fighting industry.
And one I want to bring up who's often people make fun, but was incredibly over in his day, Bushwhacker Luke.
Oh, man. The Bushwhackers are one of the best tag teams of all time. And,
and they seem like a joke at the time, but really they aren't. No. I mean, they were incredibly over.
Yeah, they were incredibly over, and, their wrestling ability, I don't think people give them enough credit for that. They had really intelligent matches during their time.
They did. And I saw a video not too long ago of them at the White House Easter egg roll. This would have been in the early 90s. I'm like, WWE or WWF at the time actually put them out there to be the brand ambassadors for them, the Bushwhackers. So yeah, you only do that with your top talent.
Right, and you know, a lot of people aren't familiar with where they're from too, and that's a big part of their gimmick.
Are they from down under?
They are. I believe they're from, I believe it's New Zealand.
Oh, really? I always wondered what the background was. Talk to me about who else we got coming on.
Of course, we have Britt Baker.
Wait, let's stop right there. Britt Baker, DDS. I hope to talk to her. I have a dentistry family, so she's a good get. She's one of the most over women in the world right now.
Right. She's really kind of positioned herself as the face of AEW's women's division, you know, and as controversial as that is, you know, I think it just it really speaks to just how reliant wrestling is on women right now. It's really a interesting phase for the industry.
Britt Baker's really used blood and gore, so to speak, to get her name out there. I just did a video about her on Going Ringside at both Instagram and TikTok. But she has a controversy with the black eye T-shirt. I saw Fox News doing articles on that. When a wrestler can get mainstream publicity, that's a big deal for a wrestler.
No, that's a major thing, and especially because, you know, it was Britt, Saraya, and their stables, you know, the Outcasts, and then, you know, Team Britt Baker. It's really fascinating, you know, to kind of see that out of all narratives in AEW, that is by far, in my opinion, I think the most widely covered.
Who else you got?
We have Thunder Rosa.
Thunder Rosa, a very strong female wrestler.
Incredibly.
Still in AEW, right?
She's still in AEW.
Gotcha.
You know, and she's coming off of an injury, and we see, you know, Collision, their new show. She's one of the featured names, one of the main eventers, as the way at least they're promoting it. And, you know, she's a fan favorite. Every year we get flooded with requests to see Thunder Rosa come back.
Really?
Yeah, and, you know, and Thunder Rosa loves it. This is one of her favorite events to go to. It's one of her favorite towns to be at, and she gets an incredible ovation.
I see Alicia Fox. Is she on the card right now? Alicia Fox is a local woman.
Yeah, she was a late get for sure, but man, she, you know, Jacksonville native, Jacksonville born and raised. It's great to have her on.
Talk to me about what fans need to know, going, time, place, tickets, all that.
Right, so once again, it's a two-day event, June 10th and 11th. If you grab a VIP ticket, which there are very few left, there's probably single digits right now.
Okay.
You get access to our pre-party we're doing at the Fairgrounds Friday, June 9th. We have a ton of local acts coming on. It's going to be great. And then, of course, you get a swag bag. You get, for certain wrestlers, you get to have, you know, an advanced line to go and meet them. And, of course, you know, there's going to be live wrestling throughout the day. That's one of the unique things about this event, because everybody's ticket includes access to a day-long live wrestling show each day. There are unique matches. We have Q&As going on. We just announced Nia Jax. We have, of course, Ken Shamrock, Dan Severn, and Butterbean are going to be doing a super fight.
That's what I'm going to ask you. Butterbean, I forgot about that. I'm glad you brought that up. Tell me about Butterbean, because his time in wrestling was so short, but it was very important.
Oh yeah. You know, there was even a Dark Side of the Ring special on that. You know,
really?
I'm gonna kick myself because the name escapes me. But you know, WWE at the time was doing like Brawl for All, right?
Yeah, I'm well aware. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I believe he challenged Bart Gunn. I think that was a WrestleMania match.
It was because I talked to Mark Marrow about that on the show a couple months back, and he was in Brawl for All.
Right.
And he said it ruined Bart Gunn's career when you put him up against Butterbean.
Right, and you know, Butterbean also has an MMA background too.
Really?
Yeah, Butterbean. I mean, people kind of see him, you know, as this kind of comedic figure, but man, in the ring, that guy could get down. You know, he was thrown down with the best of them. He's well respected, but he's a friend of the show. You know, we have him every year, and we always make room for him because he's just a great guy to have.
So people can go. They're going to see the matches. They're going to meet the wrestlers, and is there one better day to go? Saturday, Sunday, Friday? What would you say?
I would say both Saturday and Sunday are pretty even in terms of star power and entertainment value. Because we have a unique lineup each day. There are some stars that are only available for either Saturday or Sunday. So
like Jake told me, he'll be just Saturday. Yeah.
Right. You know, and Kurt Angle and Rob Van Dam, Nia Jax and Ken Shamrock, they're only Sunday.
Okay.
You know, Saturday only Danielson, Bryan Danielson, Saraya, Britt Baker, Thunder Rosa, and then, it's kind of like a concert, where you have different acts each day.
And so what kind of crowds do you get at this? Because you've been doing it 4 years. Has it been growing? Has it been steady? What's that been like?
It's been growing year over year. We get a large family crowd, which is something we like because, this is because we invite, all families, all cultures to come in and just celebrate wrestling.
Now, I didn't really know what I was going to. I think I went to your first one just because I saw we got a press release about it, and I was a wrestling fan, so they just sent me over to interview. I saw the NWO. I interviewed Nash, who was kind of really Kevin Nashy toward me, which I loved. I see Jimmy Hart. I saw Vicky Guerrero and Teddy Long, Ricky Steamboat, and Arn Anderson. You've just had a huge amount of big names here over the years.
Right, and I think that just really speaks to the volume of the show, right? Because now it's becoming like a status symbol in a way where it's like, if you're not at this event, then you're not in the who's who. And I've never expected that, because at first you just think like, this is just a fan celebration. Then you start to see the impact on what it represents to a lot of wrestlers, what it represents about Florida's wrestling scene, and really that Jacksonville is just at the epicenter of all this.
What's it been like for you as a wrestling fan and now somewhat of a promoter to watch your city go from this town where maybe we get a show here or there to really, I'd say we're up there with New York City and Las Vegas and Los Angeles as far as impact on the wrestling scene?
Right. I think for Jacksonville, it was a long time coming, but once again, I believe it's a very underrated location for a lot of things because, Jacksonville, throughout its history, it was a target for a lot of major projects, right? Because originally Disney World was supposed to be here. And now you start to see that wrestling's kind of seized that, and I remember whenever I went to Monday Night Raw just a few weeks ago, they had this clip whenever they were off air for a commercial. They were showing that for the first tribute to the troops, the stars came to Jacksonville and they flew out of NAS Jax overseas for the very first one. And that's just a unique thing, for Jacksonville. And I think we've only had one other tribute to the troops, I think maybe two since then. But there's so many cultures here. There's so many wrestling fans. You also have to consider too with the types of communities we have, right? We have a massive Puerto Rican community. That's a very prominent wrestling place as well, as you saw with Backlash this year. Mm-hmm. And Jacksonville is just kind of a collective of all that.
I want to get your opinion. We have UFC in town next month. Mm-hmm. What do you think about this WWE-UFC merger?
I think this is unprecedented. I'm very excited to see what happens because you have to think like both of these titans of industry have, because the term sports entertainment, I know wrestling fans have their own opinions on it, right? But as it applies objectively to this subject, they have both revolutionized the sports and entertainment value. And now you're starting to see these two gigantic companies, they're merging. But what's important as well is Vince McMahon is at the top, right? Over Dana White. Mm-hmm. So that's going to mean that he also has some influence over UFC. Yeah. So you have to think like, what does Vince have to offer UFC and what does Dana have to offer WWE? And that's just, when you spend time thinking about it and you're like, wow, that's major.
You think Brock Lesnar is going to be the face of it?
My fan speculation, I think we're going to see shifts like, maybe Brock Lesnar, for example, wins the Universal title and he's going to pop up at a UFC event and then challenge for the UFC championship, right?
I would love to watch this.
That would be fantastic.
Just so I know, because we're taping this a couple weeks out, still hasn't happened yet. Mm-hmm. Any other surprises down on the pike? Or is it pretty set in stone at this point?
I think we're pretty set in stone. I don't foresee too many other people. There's some that I wish I could speak on right now, but they're just too tentative to really nail down. But I think there might be some last-minute surprise guests. But as of right now, I think that the lineup's pretty set. We're pushing forward with it, and we're expecting a sellout for sure with the lineup that we have.
Well, Nick Batey, thank you with River City Wrestling Con. Thank you so much for joining us today. Exciting things coming up in about a week and a half to Jacksonville's wrestling scene. So that was our interview with Nick Batey, the guy who put all this together down at the Jacksonville Fairgrounds June 10th and June 11th. One more time, I want to talk to you about a few things. We will be doing Going Ringside, a live podcast from the event. We'll be there all weekend, June 10th and 11th. Our live event, our live podcast will be June 10th. So come down and see us, talk to us. We'd love to hear from the fans and get a little more knowledge of what fans want to hear on the podcast. So it'll be a great way. It'll be our first live show out on the road. So we're excited about that. But big stars they got there: Bryan Danielson, Sarray Page, Kurt Angle, RVD, Ron Simmons, Britt Baker. Just a lot, so it's exciting. So I do want to talk to you one more time about that sweepstakes. Let's put it up there. If you are in the Jacksonville area, you know our website. If you're not, our website is news4jax.com. You can enter our sweepstakes to win some tickets. Just find the Insiders tab on our website. It's not that hard. Just scroll around, and then you can go into that article right now, which we're doing right now, and just look and get the details. All you need to do is provide an email address to become an insider on our website and then to submit into the sweepstakes. So it's exciting, but remember, being an insider with news4jax.com, there's not much to it. Just give us your email, nothing else. It's all you need, and you can be entered to win some free tickets. And once again, I will announce the winners of the sweepstakes on June 7th. So we hope you tune in to the next episode, which will drop June 7th, to hear who won. And then, of course, we hope to see you at River City Wrestling Con. We'll be there all weekend, June 10th and 11th. Come out and see us, along with all these other stars who I'm sure you really want to see down at the fairgrounds in Jacksonville. So thanks for joining us for another episode of Going Ringside.
This has been Going Ringside with the local station, brought to you every Wednesday on your favorite podcast player, on News4Jax Plus, as well as the News4Jax YouTube channel.